Being a good GM requires consistency, endless preparation, and player appreciation. This is Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master.
Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert, the narrator, and thank you for joining me for this episode of Confessions. Well, this episode of Confessions, as you can tell from the title, I'm going to do a quick look at Cyberpunk Red, the newest edition of Cyberpunk. But before I do that, I am going to talk about my history with the game, with the classic Cyberpunk genre game. So a month ago, a couple of friends and I played through the jumpstart of Cyberpunk Red, kind of the preview of the new role playing game, and I really enjoyed it. And my friend reminded me that or we looked it up, and the digital version, the PDF, was going to be coming out in mid-November, and I forget when we talked about when the full book was going to come out, but I forget when they said that was. But I was really excited from what I had seen from the Jumpstart kit. So fast forward to a few days ago, friends and I were on our group message talking about games, and a friend reminded me, "Hey, the PDF of Cyberpunk Red is out." And I was like, oh my God, because my memory is the worst. I had totally forgotten that when it was coming out, and I immediately went on to Drive Through RPG and picked up the PDF. And I am really happy that I did. But oh, how things have changed in the world. Many years ago, I was definitely a Shadowrun type of guy. When if I had a preference, I preferred Shadowrun, and I think I preferred Shadowrun because it was a much more interesting game. It was much more interesting in my mind because of the urban fantasy concepts. You had fantasy races, you had magic, and I just thought that that was much more interesting to me. And it's funny, I have a friend, my friend Phil, who I met decades ago in a local gaming club. He was always a cyberpunk guy, and I was always a Shadowrun guy, and we would always go back and forth about that. He disliked Shadowrun more than I dislike a cyberpunk, but yeah, we were definitely on opposite sides when it came to those two games. And it's kind of weird that now I can't do Shadowrun. I love Shadowrun. I always have. I've always loved the setting, but nowadays I can't do a rules heavy game. And now looking at Cyberpunk Red, Cyberpunk always having been the more rules light system, I think Cyberpunk Red is now the game that I prefer instead of Shadowrun, because Shadowrun has never fixed the issue of being so rules heavy. I wish that Free League would get the license for Shadowrun and do a Shadowrun game, because I mean, it's very similar. They use D6 die pools, but much smaller than Shadowrun. You know, I'm way past the days of wanting to roll 14d6 to resolve a task. I wish they would get the license and so that they could do Shadowrun, but that's probably never going to happen. But anyway, so yeah, that's where I am right now. I was a Shadowrun guy, can't do Shadowrun anymore, and Cyberpunk Red is looking really, really good to me. As a matter of fact, after looking through Cyberpunk Red, The thing that occurred to me that I had not figured out is I really don't have, like 6 months ago, if someone came to me and said, hey, run your favorite cyberpunk genre inspired role playing game, I wouldn't have one that I thought would be a perfect fit. Now, I have in my top 10 favorite role playing games of all time, I have a three science fiction games, Numenera, Star Wars Edge of the Empire, and Shadowrun, obviously, in my top 10 favorites of all time. But Numenera, which is built around the Cypher system, which is a generic rule set, just doesn't have all of the things that I look for when I want to do sci-fi or cyberpunk adjacent role playing. And what I'm looking for is, well, it is rules medium, verging on rules light. So it has that. But what Cypher System doesn't have is a robust gear system with fantastic illustrations of the different pieces of gear, equipment, and weapons, but not an overly complex mechanics around that variety of different weapons. So those are the two things these days that are really important to me when it comes to a sci-fi game or a cyberpunk genre, a role-playing game. Is it has to be rules medium, and it has to have cool illustrations, a variety in its gear and equipment system, but not be overly complex as far as gear. And Cyberpunk Red pretty much fits the bill. However, what I will say, and I guess I'm going to go ahead and start getting really close to talking about the quick look at Cyberpunk Red, is that what it doesn't have is a gear or weapons illustrated well and being fairly robust. As a matter of fact, what they did was they kind of made all of the weapons generic. They have a medium pistol and a heavy pistol and a super heavy pistol and an assault rifle, and they don't have the manufacturers' names anymore or the different models made by different manufacturers. And I actually, this is the second time I've done this video, and between videos, I didn't know the answer to this, but I went back and looked at Cyberpunk 2020, and all of the weapons did have their manufacturers' names. And I really love that. It really immerses you in the game, and they definitely had more illustrations of weapons. But that is a nitpick because of how great it seems like Cyberpunk is. Now, there is a game that I really like that is a sci-fi or cyberpunk adjacent role-playing game, and that game is called Faith, the role-playing game. And as you see over here, the game actually is the only game that I have ever kickstarted. It was many years ago. Faith was created by a small Spanish independent company, and the idea was, as you probably can tell from the illustrations, is they used cards for task resolution, and they also used cards for the art, for the gear, weapons and armor and so forth. So the idea is to have all of the art and the rules on the table, and you give the players cards showing the art and stats for their equipment, so you don't have to flip through the book. And it was a really cool concept. But the only thing with and Faith was a rules light system, as a matter of fact. But it's really unique. And of course, in these times of COVID, you can't be around a table handing out props and so forth. So though Faith, the role-playing game, the science fiction role-playing game, is really interesting, and it meets all of the criteria. And I love systems that use alternate task resolution systems like cards and all of that. And it was a box set. It still doesn't really give me everything that I wanted. So right now I'm going to do the quick look at Red. So this is the cover here. This game has a ton of art in it, and all of it is gorgeous. I have yet to see a piece of art in the game that I don't enjoy. And it looks really great. And let's see if I can find some images of weapons and so forth. Here we go. So this is where the weapons start, and they have a couple of images, but as you can tell, like melee weapons, it's just light melee weapon, medium melee weapon, and so forth. And then when you get to the range weapons, you have heavy pistol, you have assault rifle, you have sniper rifle. They really don't have the manufacturer's names anymore. But as I said, that is just a nitpick. The game is rules medium. It's super simple. It's really easy. And the thing that I have not always been a fan of is systems that give you a whole bunch of skills. So these are all of a ton of skills that Cyberpunk has, but I don't mind it. And the reason I don't mind Cyberpunk having so many skills is it the system is so rules light. I mean, it can't get easier. What task resolution system is, you have your 10 stats right here. You have an intelligence or intellect. I think it's intellect, reflexes, dexterity, technique, cool, willpower, luck, move, body, and imp. And you have your skills, and you just add those two together when you do a task. You roll a d10 and you go against a static target number on opposed roll where the opponent is doing the same thing. They're using their appropriate stat and skill and rolling those, and whoever has the highest roll wins. Ties go to the defender, I'm pretty sure. And so that's why I'm not upset with Cyberpunk Red having all of these skills, because of how simple the system is. And when a system is that simple, having all of those skills adds an appropriate amount of granularity to the game, where characters can be different enough in such a rules medium or rules light system. And I kind of like that. And then, of course, you have your roles in the game, basically your character classes, where really the only thing your role gives you is a role ability. So they're not as detailed as character classes, say, in Dungeons and Dragons. And it seems like the system could be fairly deadly, but I'm in the game that we played with the Jumpstart kit. It wasn't bad, but I think it could get fairly bad, and I really want to play the game and see how deadly the full version of the game is. So the book is gorgeous. Like I said, this is just going to be a quick look. I'm going to read through this, and I'm going to do a full review. They have in the game, I find it very interesting. They have three methods for character creation, something called street rats, edge runners, and complete packages. And essentially, what they do is, if you're doing a one shot, the street rat is really easy to put together and really simple to construct. And then edge runners have a little bit more details, and the complete package is you building your character point by point, and making a fully fleshed out character that you spend points for. And then, of course, you have what my favorite part of Cyberpunk has always been, and that's the life path system, which looks really interesting. They've also added life paths for each role in the games, a solo, net runner, and so forth, to kind of customize your life path. And here's the life path. I've always loved that about that. I think what Shadowrun and Cyberpunk have in common is both of them have really interesting character creation rules, and I've always loved the idea that character creation rules forcing players to give their characters background. So that guy who just wants to make an orphan and he doesn't know anybody and his entire family is dead. You really can't get away with that in Cyberpunk, and I really love that. I've always loved Shadowrun, their prioritization system where they have different categories in character creation. You have your race, your skills, your money, your talents, maybe, and some other things, but five or six categories, and you have to prioritize them from the most important to the least important. So if you wanted to be a metahuman race, you probably had to put your best rank in that. Or if you wanted to be very wealthy, you would want to put one of your higher ratings in that. And I've always loved that aspect of Shadowrun. So both of them have things that I really enjoy. And in a couple, maybe in a week or so, I'm going to go ahead and do a review of the game. Like I said, this is just a quick look. Gorgeous game. I love what I have seen thus far, and I think at this point I may have my new go-to game when I want to do some cyberpunk genre role playing. I think Cyberpunk has won, and yeah, like like I said, things have really changed from days gone by. So that was my quick look at Cyberpunk Red and discussion about my history with the game. And thanks for checking this out. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you are watching this video. I'll talk to you later.